Chapter 2, Nivaton. Pyper, San Diego. There was noise all around me as I opened my eyes. Immediately, the place where I grew up took me in. Cool breeze grazed my skin, and I straightened up, heart giddy. "Put me down, Dogen," I said. I barely murmured my thanks as the huge man obliged and dropped me to the ground. The weariness that fighting and traveling brought was gone. Being home does that for a person. I fled and found the familiar path to our treehouse. "Father!" I shouted. "Mother!" I cried as I ran. From around me, faces started appearing. My kin, my family, my everything surrounded me. All of them were smiling. "You're back!" they shouted. I stopped running and nodded eagerly. Yes, I'm back home now." My voice broke, and I felt the surge of loneliness that clutched at my heart. I had been homesick without knowing it. Oh, how I missed everybody! I could not help it. I voiced out my thoughts. I ran toward my cousin and immediately held out my hands to Melissa. "I missed everyone so much," I said. Melissa grasped my hands, and we danced round and round and round. The elderly around us were watching, their faces painted with smiles. When Melissa and I stopped, we were both crying and panting. "Is it true?" she asked. "That the Emperor was pursuing you?" I stepped back and stared at her. Her eyes were round and glistening. "It wasn't me they were after. I was only helping a friend. We lost our families." I stilled, shocked at what Melissa had just said. "What?" I looked around me. It was only then that I noticed the smiles the Nivens offered me. It was not tinged with the usual warmth. Instead, a touch of sadness veiled their eyes. There was a certain weariness to their movements, slow and cumbersome. They glided no more and instead dragged their feet. A handful of spearmen. Mostly fathers who went to Kanelan Palace to rescue Jaras's body. I stared in greater disbelief. "What do you mean rescue Jaras's body? Was he hurt? Was he captured?" I started frantically now. It was at that moment that Melissa sobbed. "He's gone. His family was cast away. They are like Kogi's family now. Unwanted and nameless," Melissa croaked. "That can't be true. Father, he wouldn't do that to Mistress Alicia," I said. From behind me, I heard a sweet voice shouting my name. "Pyper!" my mother called out. I turned just in time to see her running towards me. I ran toward her, suddenly unmindful that Melissa and I were still engaged in a conversation. "Mother!" I shouted back and kept running as fast as I could. When she was only a few feet away, I leapt and caught her body, clinging to her with all my remaining strength. Then I showered her face with kisses. "I missed you, Mother. Oh, how I missed you." Mother was clutching me. She staggered. "You're growing up, Pyper. I can hardly stand straight with your weight on me now," she said, laughing. I gave Mother another tight hug before jumping back down to the ground. "I am back, Mother," I said. "As I can see," she said. I hugged her again. "I miss you and everybody here. And Father? Where is he? I thought he would be the first one to see me." "Your father isn't home yet. The world is stirring. Rebels are everywhere, and your father is doing whatever needs to be done," Mother replied. "But he belongs here. If rebellions are out there, he should be here to lead our people," I said. Mother grabbed my hand and led the way. She walked briskly past the other Nivens. Behind me, I saw Dogen talking to a few Nivens. There was also Elder Man. And Uncle Salvatore. I skipped and hopped and all but eventually ran to keep up with Mother's pace. "Where are we going?" I asked. "To the treehouse. You need to eat first. Then, let us talk about what has happened since you left," Mother said. Upon entering the treehouse, I could only eat a slice of bread and greasy meat before I felt my eyes drooping from want of sleep. The last thing I remembered was Mother's arms around me as she hoisted me and carried me to my bed. There were no stories to share at that moment. The sky was already dark when I opened my eyes a few hours later. I sat up and glanced outside. Who was to say that things have changed? I could see the moons Luna and Risa casting their faint glow across the land from my room's window. The few lights inside Niven houses were no match to the night sky. The birds sang their familiar melodies, the ones that drove little Nivens to sleep. On a night like this, I would sometimes hear lutes and drums from below, a sign that there were still some Nivens awake. But tonight, even with the familiarity of the silence, something seemed amiss. I stood up, walked to the window, and trailed my eyes below. Nothing seemed to stir. Where could Dogen be? Perhaps he had been talking with the elders. I walked outside to look for Mother. I thought we would be able to discuss the events that I missed, but my body craved sleep, and so now I was as clueless as I was when I arrived. "Mother," I said, knocking on her door. "Mother?" I paused to listen for sounds inside, but when there was nothing to be heard, I pushed the door to her room open and was greeted with stark darkness. I decided to go downstairs and look for Mother. The night sky was darker than I remembered from all my days spent here. Maybe it was the roofless nights I spent over the past months that made me more aware of the nocturnal hues. My feet brought me to the town hall, where I knew my parents frequented. Father, Andoni San Diego, is the chief hunter, and he was expected to spend most of his days here to lead the people. On the other hand, my mother, Laren San Diego, stayed here because of my father. I walked the halls and noticed that lamps were burning, meaning there were indeed people inside the discussion areas. Where would Father be? If he was not here, whose responsibility would it be to lead the Nivens? Uncle Salvatore, perhaps, because he was one of the elders. And maybe some of that responsibility would fall on Mother, too, although I did not like the idea. I took a left turn as soon as I reached the end of the hall and opened the first door. No one was inside. I walked some more and waited for a hint of light seeping under any of the doors. The third door I passed flickered glowing light from underneath, and after knocking, I pushed the door open. "Pyper," Mother said. "Come in." There were more than a dozen people inside. A much fewer number as compared to the frequent town hall meetings. They all fell silent when they saw me by the door. It sent chills up my spine, having them look at me so solemnly. One of them pushed a chair beside my mother and gestured for me to sit there. I followed obediently. It seemed odd for me to be here. Yet, I so wanted to join in the conversation or at least listen to their discussions. Father had never allowed me to participate in any Niven meeting, but I guessed that the rebellions had changed things so far for my mother to let me be here. She looked at me once, her eyes asking if I were fine, before gesturing to the Nivens to continue with the discussion. There were 36 of us who came. Only barely a dozen remained. Bombay started. He seemed to have grown muscles during the months I had not seen him. Before the Akene Wine Festival, he was barely a man, but now his voice had gone low and his shoulders had broadened. I still don't understand how it happened. The first batch swept the palace grounds. When Jaras was found, the second batch came to retrieve the body. When they had left, the third came to clean up. When did it all go awry? He continued. I stiffened. I remembered what Melissa told me. Jaras's body was retrieved, which meant that he had died. It was still hard for me to reconcile that the lanky boy, who is only a few moon turns older than I, was already on the journey to meet our ancestors. My eyes began to sting. It was a slip, Laren. Dono, may his soul be taken by the gods kindly, bumped against a soldier. He cursed, and that was when our cover was blown. The palace soldier ran away towards the Emperor's men. Dono's mistake was that he didn't kill the soldier when he should have. If one life had been taken, the others would have been spared. As it turned out, the soldier roused not only his fellow soldiers but the war generals themselves, Bale said. As Bale continued speaking, my heart thumped wildly. Their fight with the war generals of the Kanelan Palace reminded me of the time when the Emperor himself ordered Kino's death and the disaster that came after that. How did Jaras die? The thought kept nagging me. Was it because of me? I brushed the idea away. Bale looked at Elder Man, who seemed somber. The elder witnessed everything. He can attest that what I've been telling the hall this entire time was true. No one is questioning your testimony, Mother said in a firm voice. Then why do I have to keep repeating this? Everyone in this room knew what happened, Bale said. Elder Man looked grim. Bale spoke no word that is not true. He stole a glance at Mother. He paused for a while as if preparing to hurl hurtful words. When next he spoke, his voice was calmer. Nivens fought well, but if not for the help of the war dogs, we would have fallen prey to the palace soldiers. The Emperor himself brandished his sword. I couldn't stop myself from shaking as I listened to Elder Man. I still remember when Kino and I had been running away from the Emperor's wrath. Mother looked at me and held my hand. "Pyper," she said. "No one can hurt you here. You are among our people. No one will dare." I still shook, although Mother had moved away from her seat and closer toward me, hugging me close. I didn't notice that tears streaked my cheeks until Mother had wiped them away. "Be brave. For your father." At the mention of Father's name, I lost it. The Emperor is an evil man. I saw how he hurt everyone at the Akea wine festival. I saw. And now he hurt our people too. He wouldn't stop until he captured Kino. We must rescue him. We must search for Kino, Mother. Please. Perhaps Pyper is a little too young to be here in the town hall. It was Uncle Salvatore who spoke. "No. Don't make me go back to the treehouse. You can't make me," I protested. "Hush, Pyper," Mother said. "You will stay with us," she said, shooting a disgusted look at Uncle. The rest of the Nivens remained still. Elder Man looked ready to send me to bed, but he did not say a word. I was grateful for the silence. When my sobs had faded, I straightened in my seat to let them know I was okay. Only then did Mother go back to hers. "Why did Jaros die?" I asked. "Pyper," Mother said, but I cut her short. "I need to know, Mother," I said. "Was it because our clan went to the Kanelan Palace to retrieve me during the last Akea wine festival?" "The boy fled the boundaries of Nivedon with another nameless, Kogi," Uncle Salvatore said. "They were not asked to go, but they did. That is how one becomes nameless." I choked. Kogi had been my friend since childhood, and I had always been fond of Jaros. It was not right to brand them nameless when they had no fault that I could speak of. Nothing that I knew of. If they were nameless for fleeing Nivedon, then what does that make me? I asked. Uncle Salvatore avoided my stare. I heard my mother gasp. None among the Nivens inside the room stirred. They went on as though I had not spoken. "We must prepare for whatever is coming. By now, our identity has been compromised," Uncle Salvatore said, dismissing my question altogether. "No one has really said so." "I heard no news from the west that we are being pursued," Bombay claimed. "It is foolish to assume otherwise," the older Niven said. "Let us fortify the foot of the mountains," he continued. "Each entryway should be heavily guarded. We cannot allow the palace soldiers to march here unguarded." "And how are you proposing we do it? Send an arrow flying to any man wearing the palace's insignia?" Elder Man said. "If we must act in this manner, it must be with certainty. I propose we give it more thought. If we do that, we admit to our existence. We admit to everything we had been trying to protect. It is unacceptable," Uncle Salvatore said. Mother was silent through all these. I wanted to tell her that this was a bad idea. There was no way we could win against the palace, not even if we kept ourselves invisible during the fight. There were just too many of them. But when Mother spoke, it was with grim determination. "The time for hiding is over. No one wants to admit it, but it is time we fight. The Emperor's brutal and errant ways cannot be tolerated anymore. We will not remain sitting amidst the mountains and wait for him to eradicate us again." Her voice had tightened. "We do not lose our men to him. Not without a fight." My eyes fell upon everyone's faces, looking for a trace of defiance, for someone to counter what Mother said, but all I saw were the accepting faces of my people. I stood up in a rush, pounding my clenched fists upon the table. "Mother! We are going against everything Father had fought so hard to protect," I yelled. "You can't just all agree on this without him. We must wait for him to come back." I searched her face. It had grown stiff, and I could not read her emotions. "What has become of you?" I said, barely a whisper. "I think the child needs to rest," Uncle Salvatore spoke abruptly. "No!" I screamed. The man beside Bombay stood up to gather me, and I flailed my arms when he grabbed me. "Don't!" I shouted. "Keep your hands off me." I kept on yelling. I felt myself lifted from the floor. I kicked hard at the man's shin, but it didn't do anything to him. It's as though I didn't hurt him at all. "Keep your hands off my daughter," Mother said. She didn't even raise her voice, and yet, I felt the hand of the man grappling me loosen. I was back on my feet again, staring angrily at the Niven who dared to pick me up. Mother looked at me. "It is time for bed, Pyper." My mouth hung open in protest, but no words came out. "It is not your place to hear of the plans," she continued. She said to the rest of the Nivens, "No one will dare raise a hand on my daughter, whether to discipline her or otherwise. No one." Elder Mayan stood up and walked to my side. "I will take the child to the tree house." Nobody protested. "I will hear of the plans through Salvatore." Mother looked relieved at the gesture. I did not protest when Elder Mayan ushered me out. He walked behind me, and I watched as he closed the door behind us. The halls were empty, and there was no one about. Only the lamps gave life to the long path outside the town hall. I was fuming, but there was nothing I could do if all the Niven elders agreed to the uprising against the Kanelan palace. Elder Mayan walked beside me. His strides were short as though to keep up with my pace. "Where have you been? What adventures have you gotten yourself into?" he asked. I pouted. I wasn't ready for a conversation, but he was watching me closely, and not answering him would render me impolite. "I wanted to help a friend," I said. The elder chuckled. "You wanted to help a friend, and it ended in a disaster, didn't it?" "It wasn't my fault." "Neither was it Kino's," I protested. "How were we supposed to know that going to the Akea festival to present a power would make the Emperor berserk? I mean, Kino is harmless. He doesn't even have any power, well, not until now." "What do you mean?" the elder asked, suddenly interested. Maybe I spoke too much, revealing more than I should have. However, it was too late for me to turn back. "The boy who saved you didn't have any power, so we had to devise a plan so he could be registered as a citizen regardless. It was brilliant. Even Mayo said so." "Mayo?" "Yes. Mayo and Kino are best friends, and I became their friend too." "The general's son?" I paused to think about what Mayo had told me about his parents. "Yes. His father serves the emperor. Even his mother, too. That's why I didn't worry about him as much as Kino." When we got separated in Sinista, I paused and shivered as though a draft blew my way. "I don't know. I mean, he must have been caught by the general who was pursuing Mistress Lamare." "Lamare?" "Mistress Lamare Amark is Kino's mother. For some reason, the Emperor's men have been pursuing them. It's a pity, actually, with both of them being so weak in their powers." The elder stopped walking and regarded me. "The story you're telling me is quite complex. There are Mayo and Kino, and now Lamare. What is this web you've tangled yourself into, young lady?" I stiffened. No one has addressed me like that except for father. "I don't know. I'm as clueless as you are," I said, now uneasy with all the prodding. "But will you tell me everything you know?" the elder continued. I didn't know what the elder was so keen to find out, but something told me that I had to share what I knew with him. But not until I got some information in return. "If I do, will you promise to help me?" I bargained. "What is it that you need from me?" the elder asked. "I don't know where Kino is, whether he's been captured or with his mother. But I must find him." I paused, remembering Mayo. Then I said, "Them. I need to find Kino and Mayo. I don't know how, but I must. I have a feeling that we can only be safe together." "Can I have your word, elder?" I asked, sounding more desperate than I should have been. "Only if you tell me everything," he said. He looked at me, and I saw the sincerity in his eyes. "If you trust me enough to share what you know, I will help you." By now, we had stopped walking, and the tree house loomed over us. The moons were all that lit in Ibadan now. "I will tell you everything as soon as we're upstairs," I said. With that, I started climbing the tree and did not wait for the elder to follow me. I was hoping to find father seated on his chair when I reached the door, but all that greeted me inside was the darkness. Somehow, I felt comforted, wrapped in the shadows. Upstairs, I immediately excused myself to eat whatever was left from dinner. I lit a lamp and adjusted its wick so it glowed dimly and would go unnoticed outside. Elder Mayan followed me into the kitchen. In a few minutes, he was already pouring boiling water on his tea leaves. "Tell me everything," he said, his cup now almost full to the brim. "There was this boy," I began, narrating how I met Kino, from the part where he was pursued by bullies down to my taking a few of his coins. The elder nodded upon hearing my story as though the anecdote about the coins was familiar. It was you who confirmed to me that Nivens exist, he said. Was it me? I asked in disbelief. How could it have been me? I said in defense. It could not have been me. My father would disown me if he learned of the deed. The coin. The pig you chased to take back the coin. He was smiling at the memory. But there was no one with the pig. Or were you there? I asked, panicked. Although come to think of it, there's no sense in panicking now. The world already knew about us. Red told me you were coming after her, the elder said, chuckling lightly. Red? I said, now quizzical. The pig has a name, he said. Before you retrieved the coin, I had the chance to see it. And when you wrestled, perhaps thinking that you were alone, you slipped with your power, and I saw you. My mouth must have been hanging open because Elder Mayan gestured for me to close it. I obliged. So, the reason you came back was me? I asked. I knew the answer to my question, but I didn't want to believe it. Put it behind you. As I have told you, I am here to form an allegiance with the Nivens. I am not here to destroy your clan but rather join forces with you and ultimately help bring peace to Akea. But if not for me, there will be no risk of Elder Tala, I said. He's been captured. He's with us, the elder interrupted. Really? But that's beside the point. I feel accountable for everything that happened. I started to sound frantic again. That is not how your father would have wanted you to reckon, he said kindly. Do you honestly believe that? I asked. Elder Man nodded. No other words were needed. I fear that we have digressed from the discussion, he said, breaking the silence. I paused to recall what I was recounting before I digressed to how Elder Man found out about the Nivens. I quickly returned to the tale where Kino, Mayo, and I agreed to present Kino as a citizen with my help. I stopped when I got to the point where the Emperor ordered Kino's execution. Elder Man looked genuinely concerned. His brows were furrowed, his face lines etching deeper on his forehead. What did you do? What was it that the Emperor was afraid of? He said softly, as though he did not mean for me to hear. His fingers glided against the wooden armrest. When nothing seemed to make sense, he continued, but we already knew this part. When you ran away, what adventures did you have? It is another long story. We met a lot of citizens. There were even friends. But what I found odd was that we met a woman who looked exactly like Mistress Lamare, Kino's mother. Is that so? He asked, surprised. Yes. But she wasn't Mistress Lamare. Or maybe she was. She has no memory, which made it difficult for us to assess if she were really Mistress Lamare or this Nia Pasap the twins claimed she was. There's Miroe and Goemi. Miroe is a little sick in the head. Well, he behaves like a child. His moods are outrageously irrational. But Goemi, his sister, is a good person. Or at least that's what I thought until Mayo and I believe that Nia was Mistress Lamare. You see, it got complicated there. And then there's the general and his troops. The tree runners. And the last sniffler. You met all of them in just a few months? The elder spoke calmly, with enthusiasm hiding under his breath. I couldn't believe it either. How did my friends and I manage to get tangled like that? I shrugged. You wouldn't have, unless these people you met were pursuing you, the elder deduced. I paused to reconsider. Then I nodded. We just wanted to get hold of the Akene Registry of Citizens. Why? Well, of course, to find out who Kino's father was, I finished. You think he's important? He asked. He has got to be someone significant. I mean, why would the Emperor be so mad? Perhaps if we got hold of the registry, we could see if Mistress Lamare's name was listed. If not, that would somehow support our conclusion that Kino was nobly born, I said almost matter-of-factly. And you thought about all of these on your own? He prodded. Mayo was the one who thought of it, I said. That's why we also wanted to find out who Kino's father was. Somehow, we knew that it would have been easier for everyone if we'd known. Elder Mayan didn't say anything after that. I decided to continue. Then, we were in Sinista. Elder Mayan's eyes rounded when I mentioned the place. Sinista was an evil place. It made my skin crawl when I was there, knowing there were hubbubs everywhere. That was where we all got separated. I was taken by Manirin and turned over to Dogen. Mayo was somewhere else, caught by the general, most likely. And the rest? I don't know where they were. I stopped, and I felt a chill inside my chest. I don't know where my friends were. If I did not know that, how would I ever be able to help them out? You shouldn't worry about Mayo. If he is a general's son, then nothing bad could happen to him, I suppose, Elder Mayan said logically. That was true, but I couldn't help but worry for him just as well. How about the others? Kino? The rest? Haven't you had any form of communication with them since? The elder asked. There was none, I replied. I didn't see where Kino and Mistress Lamare went. Then, Doemi and Quila were gone, I added, my words trailing off softly, helplessly. Maybe there's a way we can help them. I will leave instructions to search for them, the elder said. I was about to ask whom he would leave instructions to when I realized that he was referring to the animals. Maybe birds to make the search faster. Describe them to me, the elder said. You don't have to describe Kino. I know him. But the others? I took to remember what my friends looked like. Quila Tash was a chubby girl of around 14 moon turns. She is thick of girth with a plump, pretty face and fair skin. Goemi Pasap had dark hair and was about a few inches taller than Quila. Thin and handsome. Not exactly beautiful the way girls should be, but she was attractive. Enough to make people turn their heads for a second glance. And Mayo Calo is a fat boy. The elder's face turned ashen. What did you say? Mayo Calo is a fat boy. He has dark hair too. He has huge brown eyes that were round. He is a few inches shorter than Kino, but his girth could be more than twice Kino's. The elder was still staring strangely at me. And you said he is a general's son? Yes? I nodded. Elder Mayan continued to stare at me like I had grown horns. Then before I could figure out his thoughts, he said, forget the boy. He is not to be your friend. I stared at him in disbelief, wondering what I ever said for the elder to form that opinion about Mayo. No. He is a friend. And I must find him as much as I need to find Kino, I insisted. Elder Mayan didn't say anything, but his lips were set on a firm line. Please. You said you would help if I told you about what happened to me while I was away. Yes, Elder Mayan answered. I will ask my friends to help. I will tell you once I hear from them. The information may not come as quickly as I want, but it will come. The elder stood up and moved as though to leave, but his footsteps were heavier than I expected. By the door, he stopped and regarded me. His parting words to me, keep safe. Wait for any information I will provide. Don't be stubborn and leave Nivedin without talking to me first. The elder was eyeing me, and I blushed. It appears he knew my errant ways. My mouth opened slightly as I said, yes, elder. I promise. It was a promise I hoped I could keep.